harvest. Hi, Zizaran here with another quick video for Ultimatum League, and today we're going to talk about essences, how to use them, how they work, and when to upgrade and when not to upgrade. So, essences are found, and they're sort of like strong boxes where there'll be imprisoned monsters, and you click them 3 times, they will fight you, and you kill them, and you get the essence that's listed on them. So, essences are sort of like targeted alchemy orbs or chaos orbs. They will guarantee 1 stat. The alchemy ones are basically up to wailing, and then once they are screaming, shrieking, or deafening, they actually act as a chaos orb, so you no longer require the item to be white. You can actually use it as a chaos orb. First off, like the best place to farm essences and get like a large amount for them is Hayward Hamlet. Here you will get this one guaranteeing an essence and that they are higher. That means that they will spawn with the second highest tier, which is Shrieking, which is a lot better for endgame crafting. Something you can do with them is to upgrade them, and you don't need an essence tab for that. You can just like vendor them, and that will give you every 3 essences will give you 1 tier higher. Some people might be wondering, well, why aren't all of your essences deafening, Zizaran? Why aren't you just like going through it and clicking like this? Why isn't that something you're doing? Well, that's because a lot of the time we don't want to use deafening essences. A lot of the time you want to use screamings or shriekings because they can be a lot more cost efficient. In some cases, like for example, doubt essences, I am only going to upgrade these all the time, right? I only want deafening doubts, and that's because of a mod in Harvest that lets you switch a stack of essences to another stack, and I'm never going to have a use for doubts, and people aren't going to buy them either. But there are several essences, like let's look at anger, for example. Sometimes people use these to craft percentage fire damage jewelry to get a little like high opal rings with a lot of fire damage. But let's look at the damage difference between deafening, shrieking, and anger. The difference here between shrieking and deafening is only 3% increased fire damage, and it's another 3%. So technically, you're losing like 6 to 9% between a bottom rolled screaming and a top rolled deafening, and that's not necessarily worth 9 less tries. So you get a lot more bang for your buck for early on in the game with like early essences. So there's a lot of them that you can, especially early game, like using screaming woes, screaming fears, screaming angers, etc. Get a lot more value for your time. And also for selling them, there's never a reason to upgrade to deafening, because the deafening essence of anger is never going to sell for more than 3 shriekings, because somebody could just buy them and upgrade them themselves, right? But alternatively, you can never downgrade a deafening. So if somebody is looking to buy a bulk amount of shriekings, there's always just a benefit of at least keeping them at shrieking or screaming. I mean, there probably should be a way to downgrade them. I don't see why there's a reason why we can't sell a deafening for 3 shriekings. But either way, a decent rule of thumb for like crafting with essences is screaming is like when you have like 5x and less. Shriekings is for when you have like 5 to 10x or more. And deafenings, you really want to generally have like 10 to 20x and more. And there are some exceptions for this, but if you're literally going to be like spamming deafening essences on an item, that becomes really, really expensive. It's actually pretty hard to buy a large amount of essences, and farming them yourself isn't particularly easy too. In the last league, this was a bit easier because we had a larger amount of harvest, so we could keep swapping a essence that we didn't need. For example, I'm not interested in selling the hatred essences or using them, so I'm going to be trying to swap that around to something that I need. That's actually what I did with the deafening essence of loathings, which is a really, really good essence and something I did want to keep. I think it was a stack of suffering essences became a stack of loathing essences, and loathing is a really, really good essence. So remember that essences have its own thing it'll do for each item. So a loathing essence on a weapon will guarantee 38% crit, and then everything else is going to be random. And however, on a helmet, it has a very special stat, 5% reduced restoration of skills. This is really good because a lot of builds can benefit a lot from that, particularly spell slingers might need a little bit extra restoration to be able to run what they need. Being able to do this on a helmet that doesn't have influence or essences are particularly good to combine with fractured items. Now, if you don't know what fractured items are, this is an example. So here we have 29% cold rest is fractured. If I used a deafening essence of greed on this, it would guarantee a really high life roll and it would keep the cold resist. So some examples of that, you could actually, with harvest, which gives you the option of either fracturing a prefix or fracturing a suffix at random, you could try to get a helmet where you've fractured the 5% restoration and then use a greed essence. Then you'll have a really high life helmet with 5% restoration. So there are some really, really good stats from essences. And there are some other good usage for when you can actually reasonably use deafenings pretty early. And this is a really good thing where you could just use a deafening essence of greed and get 126 life. Even if this was a very, very low item level thing, it actually completely bypasses that. And there are several things that are really good for this. So with deafening and shrieking essences of woe, something that's very, very strong is to use them on item level 2 ones. Because how that works is that a item level 2 1 is going to have a really, really low amount of mods that it can roll. So it's fairly reasonable that you will get a Driftwood wand, which sadly it has the low implicit spell damage. However, it has so few mods that it can roll that it's very likely that you're going to get like 94 spell damage and +1 physical, or 94 spell damage and +1 fire. Obviously, like getting a specific one can be hard, but I very, very often on Soul Self-One will spam screaming and shrieking essences of woe on item level 2 ones. And again, do remember, this doesn't bypass the required level to use it. It's just, it forces the high spell damage. A item level 2 one would normally only be able to roll like 15 or 20 spell damage. So there are some really, really cool uses on things like that. Another use where deafening essences are really good is the stat ones. I would say you generally don't want to use screaming essences when you're doing stat stackers. Like for example, the build I'm currently doing, I have a lead sprinkler, which is basically I get damage how much strength I have. So I have 1,700 strength, and the deafening essence of rage is something like up to 56 or 58 strength, whereas the screaming is only like 33 to 37. And again, whenever you are farming Haywark Hamlet with the essence mods and stuff like that, the essence mod for 2 chaos is insanely worth. You pretty much always get it, like the money's worth back, because essences, especially in bulk, are pretty easy to sell. And a lot of the upgraded ones sell for a large amount. And let's talk a little bit about the upgraded ones. Sometimes you'll find a Remnant of Corruption, which looks like this. It's basically a corrupted essence, and the monster can be like slightly strong and disables your regen when it hits you. And whenever you kill this, you'll get a Remnant, and this can be used on the Scorn, Envy, Misery, and Dread essences, all the purple ones. And you can basically, whenever you find an imprisoned one of one of these, you can right-click the Remnant of Corruption, left-click it on the imprisoned one, and it has a chance that it will upgrade into Insanity, Horror, Hysteria, or Delirium. And these are basically kind of unique essences that all have their own things. Like for example, Essence of Horror, when used on a helmet, gives the ability Socketed Gems deal 30% more elemental damage. And you have a Delirium Essence, which on gloves is damage over time skills, or Socketed damage over time skills deal 30% more damage over time multiplier, which is really, really good for things like Exsanguinate. It's really good for like Blight or Essence Drain, and you can make some really, really powerful gear. This can in turn be used for some more advanced crafting methods with, you could, for example, Fracture with Harvest, the 30% Delirium Essence, and then use Unveiled Chaos Orbs for rolling until you got an Unveil where it is maybe +2 AoE gems. Now you have a glove that is +2 AoE gems, 30% more damage over time multiplier, and if you're using a skill that's both AoE and projectile, like for example Essence Drain, you can then craft another +1 projectile. That would mean you'd have a glove that's 30% damage over time, +2 AoE, and +1 projectile. Then you're basically kind of a 6-linked glove already. So there's some really, really cool things you can do with these. Obviously they're pretty expensive, so spam crafting with them is pretty scary. For advanced crafting, something that's important to know is maybe sometimes you'll have an item with really, really good suffixes. Like, for example here, this is perfect for my build. I have accuracy rating equal to strength, 25 chaos rest, and I have strength. And maybe when you don't know, it could be tempting to do something like suffixes cannot be changed and use a deafening essence of greed to guarantee high life. However, essences bypass the crafting, the advanced crafting mods, so they will not respect them. If I did suffixes cannot be changed and use the deafening essence of greed, it would reroll the entire item. So be careful with stuff like that. And again, fracturing them can be really, really important. So whenever you do have like the mod from Harvest, which is fracture a prefix must have 3 prefixes, or fracture a suffix must have 3 suffixes, they can be really, really useful with essences, especially the really like special ones. There's another new thing on Delirium this league as well, which if you use it on an amulet is damage over time multiplier 10%, which is pretty decent. So I just wanted to make a quick video explaining a little bit on all the aspects of essences, and I hope you guys are having a good time in Ultimatum League. Sub if you like the videos, but as always, try to die less than I do.